Welcome back to the Chi Podcast. This is a special episode where Beck shares her story through domestic violence and the journey to reclaim herself and own her truth. There is a trigger warning. There are some heavy themes. Even though Beck does so in a very balanced and high level way, there is still the themes of violence, especially violence to women. And so if you're sensitive to these themes, this episode may not be for you. If, however, you are willing to journey into this, there's some really valuable insights to what can occur for the person experiencing DV. And I think helping us better understand the journey that one faces. And I think an important theme is what presents on the outside doesn't always tell the full story of what's happening within. So just before we jump into Beck's story from the start, I've included some really beneficial points that came up pre-podcast, which really give insight to where Beck's coming from, why she wants to share her story, and some of the challenges. If you want to jump straight to the narrative, then about 5 minutes is where it starts. Otherwise, here's Beck.
Just trying to get that awareness of that it's never anything against him as a person or anything like that. It's more, I really wanted it to be framed as a way for people to just have either a little bit of courage to be able to share their story with people, but also make it easier for other people if they haven't been around it to just be able to open up the discussion and be a little bit more of a safer, more comfortable environment so that they don't feel like that they're on their own in an isolating, complex situation like that. And the thought of the fact that he could infiltrate who I was and completely dismantle that to my core is probably one of the most terrifying things. If I copped like a punch to the face and he split my face open, it healed a lot quicker than the stuff that's still deeply rooted in me in a mental sense. So it's pretty shit because then when you're telling your story, people they hear you, but they don't really hear. As soon as they see a photo of your face or whatever, blood everywhere, like as soon as they see it, people go, "Oh, I'm so sorry," because they can visually get a bit more of a sense of it.
You're so
And you
right.
don't want to have to do that, and then it triggers people and stuff like that. So it's hard to be able to try and get your story out without feeling already like you might trigger somebody because of what's happened with you, and that then you feel bad because you don't want to hurt anyone else with your story. And it's the whole situation is so complex. The gradual mental abuse over years, I would rather the physical stuff a million times over. It's just to unlearn because whatever happened for me in the mental space, like it presented in my physical body in so many different ways. So living in that state of fear from mental and physical abuse for that long, it just unless you've been through it, it's not something that anyone can really. It's accepting that people aren't going to understand on that deeper level is also hard because all you want is someone to like I felt like coming from being a person that I felt like my whole life I really wasn't understood by people on that deeper level, and then to go through something like that really just was almost the nail in the coffin without a better way of saying it. But I use humor to mask my trauma. It's fine. But yeah, it was just, and for something so severe like that, where I literally thought that it was my last breath and that this was it. And he said that he was going to kill me. He threatened to kill our daughter, and it was different this time. And then for people to literally just be like, "Oh, he seemed like a nice guy." At that point, I'm furious. Like when I'm
You're
telling
like,
people, I'm like, I'm having the courage to tell people these things, and then people say things like that without like sort of backhandedly whatever, and then me getting angry about it, then people go, "Oh yeah, she does seem like she must be a little like."
it's like interwoven gaslighting
And
and
it's a terrible, terrible, terrible feeling. Like I can't even explain the feeling it is because there's just so many layers. It's so complex, and there's been so many layers built up over so many years that you completely just like I don't even you do your second guess yourself, and you're like I don't even know what reality is anymore.
welcome back to the Chi Podcast. I would like to welcome a special guest, Beck, and this is her journey through domestic violence and owning her truth and reclaiming herself. We connected through a certification we're both doing on shadow work, and this is definitely very pertinent to that. So, welcome to the Chi podcast, Beck.
Hey, how you going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thank you for being courageous and stepping into this space for yourself to own your truth.
Thank you. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but just wasn't sure exactly how and when. And I guess, yeah, reaching out to you during the course that we're doing sort of obviously was fated because you responded straight away, and more than happy that you're able to help me share my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it flowed. I didn't have any expectation of this sort of s- connection coming, but yeah, I'm honored that you trust me to share your story through this. So yeah, I'm
It
looking forward to.
honestly means the world to me to have you be able to just to be even just to say that you're on it means so much to me, and I think it's going to be good for me moving forward, and hopefully help other people if they've been through or if they go through anything similar.
Yeah, it's a beautiful intention. You know, when you're doing it for yourself and it can help others, then
Yeah,
yeah, your heart's in the right place.
yeah, definitely.
So diving into it, just to give everyone a little bit of a teaser overview, Beck's been through to hell and back is probably the apt way of saying it. Some of the most extreme experiences when it comes to domestic violence. Um, so where did it begin?
Basically, I was living on the Gold Coast. Started talking to my ex partner. Was thought that it was going to be the dream relationship. I thought that this person understood me on the deepest of levels, massive connection, really deep, deep connection I felt towards him. I moved my life away from the Gold Coast to be with him, and that was in 2019. And starting from about a month after I moved, when he was incarcerated for previous domestic violence events, it was basically hell from 2019, 2020 until 2024 when he almost killed me.
Wow, so it's actually quite fresh, really,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. 2023, sorry. What are we in? We're in 25 now,
Yeah.
2023. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
middle of
Even still.
2023. Yeah, it
So
was a long few years.
what I think is interesting there, and it's something I've heard from someone else I know that's been through domestic violence, is that connection at the beginning feels so right. And I guess,
Otherworldly, and but also spiritually, I that's included in this. I just felt there was a soul connection, and yeah, it's. I truly believe that this person was everything that I've ever wanted in my life, and he managed to be able to figure out exactly what those deepest, darkest desires were, and promised them to me, and did the exact opposite.
do you think it was an intentional manipulation to get you invested, or do you think there was like an energetic experience that caused it to be somewhat real in the beginning, but then his true colors came out?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. I struggle a little bit with the um, spiritual versus reality of things. Still, like I'm still have, I still somewhat feel connections to him in different ways. Like I feel like there's parts of me that is, I the way that I used to describe it to people was I felt like he'd put me under a spell, and I can't really explain it in any other way. Um, because I truly believed every word that he said. And it was quite scary to then gradually realize as things just got worse and the layers started to peel off and there was different things happening gradually, ever so gradually. I just completely, I just couldn't believe that the person that I thought they were was just not even. behind closed doors just wasn't a resemblance of that whatsoever.
And that's really one of the hardest things in those type of experiences, that you had kind of a perception of who someone was, and then as their actions continue, and eventually like the veil kind of drops and you realize what they're actually like and the difference between who they presented to be and who they are. That's a sobering reality. Hey.
Yeah, the worst thing for me was pretty much everyone in my life told me I was mad and that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And me being me, I went against it because I thought love conquers all. And I'm going to do it anyway. Uh, so that also plays into it a little bit when you also part of the narcissist type stereotype, I guess, that where you sucked away from everyone. Like my family, I didn't see my family and my friends and things like that. It was all those sort of things that played a part. Where usually I was quite a social person, and it was just a gradual distortion of reality, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really common thing I've seen as well. The narcissist manipulative type person to isolate you from your support networks and then slowly erode your sense of self, and then
Yeah,
have them as your only source of kind of connection.
yeah, and it's sort of hard because I like understanding now. I kind of got stripped down, back down to the core of myself, and I thought there was a heap of time since the last event that I just was like, I just this loss of sense of self completely. I got the sack from my job. I couldn't hold down a job. I was left with our daughter on my own and no financial support and things like that. So it's that whole part of it on the other end has been pretty. Um, I didn't realize how hard that part of it would be, considering I thought that I was pretty. I was like, oh, I'm pretty switched on. Like I'll be able to figure stuff out. But uh, going through COVID, then having having a newborn, going through COVID and all that, and sort of being isolated on my own then, and it was a long time. I feel like I've been on my own, and especially when you're in a relationship, with someone that makes you feel like that as well, it sort of makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah, yeah, that is horrible to hear.
Yeah.
So when you met, you had this intense connection, and where did it go from there? Like, and in a time frame, so you met, and then how many months did the intense kind of positive honeymoon phase last for?
Well, we actually knew of each other for years through his hobbies. When the hard thing is when we were talking to each other at different stages over a period of a couple of years before I decided to move, I was under the impression that he was single. Apparently, he wasn't. Apparently, there were other people involved. So all of the stuff leading up to it, even I didn't realize were lies
Mm.
about his reality. And so from when I moved, we moved in together. It was about a month later. There was a warrant out for his arrest from breaching an intensive corrections order from a previous person that he'd assaulted. Um, and then he got sent to jail for 4 months. So it was a pretty big. That was just before Christmas in 2019. So that Christmas, I went home to my family, and I was like, he's been locked up, and everyone just was like, Beck, and I just was like, I can't walk away because I've just uprooted my career and everything on the Gold Coast to be with this person who's promised me the world, and I believe everything that he says. Just from then, it was just horrific.
And when
It's just,
someone's so believable and you trust them,
yeah, I felt sorry for him. I believed that, I thought I stood up in court with him against the ex partner and who he was with at the time. And, trying to figure out exactly what was real and what wasn't, and where the truth, if there was any truth to anything, was just mind blowing for me and exhausting.
I think we all like to feel like our judgment's pretty good. And you know, when someone, you can feel the truth coming from someone, but when
Yeah,
someone's so adept at being a compulsive liar that they can't even tell their truth from fiction
yeah,
anymore. So
scary.
they speak to you, look you in the eyes, and they're like, no, honestly, this. And you're like, I believe you.
Yeah,
And then, you
yeah.
know,
Or they could, or you could say something and they'll go, "You didn't just say that," and I'm like, "Yes, I did," and they'll flat out look you in the eye and say, "No, you didn't." Like I don't know how many times that happened between us, and I was like, "You." It actually just sends you absolutely mental because I couldn't. There's no reasoning. There was nothing. Nothing was normal about it whatsoever. But for someone who is a bit of an empath and have my own dark past and everything, we matched each other in a lot of ways with what I thought was our pasts. I definitely played part in um, just going along with stuff like that we did, and just shitty behaviors and stuff like that. That I have been that type of person, which I didn't believe that was who I was when I left the Gold Coast, but I gradually slipped back into those type of behaviors, hanging around those type of people, and it just really, it's not. I'm not going to blame him completely for that. Like that was also my choice. Everyone's got choices, but being in that dynamic behind closed doors, uh, I just
influences you.
gave up less and less. Yeah, I didn't try and fight it anymore, and I just kept on getting sucked into it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the tricky thing. Like you said, you take responsibility for your part in it. But when you
100%.
are in a dynamic with someone and they're very convicted in the way they're going, it can be so easy just to be drawn into
Yeah,
habits, patterns, all of the things that maybe aren't aligned with the values and morals that you want to live with.
yeah.
But
But I
yeah,
still did it anyway. Like I 100% put my hand up and say that a lot of the things that I guess I wasn't happy within myself too, you know, I wasn't helping myself. Um, and I was with it. I didn't think at the time I felt like this because I didn't want to admit it, but I was just living in a state of fear and survival and confusion and just lack. I was on my own and I just thought the things that we were doing were a band-aid, but also it would bring me closer to him. Like I was like, well, if
mm,
that's what we're doing, well, I'm going to do it because that's our thing, right? Like that's,
yeah,
and I
that's
knew deep down that it wasn't who I wanted to be, and I knew that it wasn't necessarily who his best self is either. But that's what we did, and it's
yeah.
just fueled the fire for everything. I think.
And that's tricky when you're feeling alone and there's this external activity or whatever it may be, habit, action, where you're like, this isn't good for me long term,
Mm.
but it gives you that sense of closeness in the
Yeah,
moment. And
yeah.
like, yeah, I
That
could
was our
understand.
bonding. Like that was our
Yeah.
thing, and it was like, yeah, we're both done some dark stuff in our part. Like it was the darkness really that kind of like drew us together. But I knew that I'd sort of had different paths in the past, but I definitely didn't want to be doing it moving forward. But it was easy to do with someone that I felt like it was the thing that felt good for us to do together.
Yeah. And like you kind of understood each other's past. So you thought, yeah,
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 it makes sense. You know, I think a lot of people will resonate as well, particularly women, with the being told you didn't just say that and
mm,
really trying to gaslight, I guess is the right
mm,
word. But I think that's the problem that empaths and narcissists often find, empaths particularly, because narcissists tend to be very certain and empaths tend to be uncertain. So that allows them to say something with such strong conviction, and you're going to like take it in and be like, wait, are they right? And then if
mm,
they can continue that, eventually this power dynamic occurs where they can just tell you what reality was. And you're like,
mm,
oh, maybe it was. Not to mention
mm.
the dissolving of self and then going into that chaotic state. Then if they say something with conviction, you're more likely to believe it.
Yes, 100%. And it gets to the point for me where I had nothing in me to fight it anymore. But even if I did that, even if I didn't, like if I did just submit and go, yeah, no, that that pen is blue. Like it's blue. Yeah, you're right. Then there'd be another way to try and flip it to push you into that fear-based thing over something so minute, that's sort of the type of stuff that was happening every day, like most days. And it was,
Mm.
people don't understand that, what that does to your conditioning and things like that as well, because yeah, you start to really just
Be defeated.
lose your marbles. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it felt like at the time I couldn't even feel that that's what was happening, because I didn't have the energy to even, all I wanted to do was go to sleep. Like I was like, I've got to just get through the day and I'm going to punch some melatonin and I'm just going to go to sleep, because I don't want to have to deal with anything and I just can't deal with it. And then the lack of, yeah, being able to respond to things, knowing that whatever you said was going to be an issue anyway, whether
Mm.
you spoke your truth, whether you lied, it didn't matter what you did. Either way, you could never give them the right answer or the right response or whatever. It was just hell.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tricky thing, especially for a female when the physical threat comes into the equation
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
just going back to, so we've got, you've met, you've had a month honeymoon period, and then
Yeah.
he's got locked up.
Yeah.
You've gone to your parents for Christmas, and they're
Yeah.
like, nah. And then due to you being like a headstrong person as well, and I have
I'm
this
gonna stick it
tendency
out.
that I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I can't be told. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. I
And
just uprooted my life. There's no way I can walk away from it now. I'm just gonna stick with believing him and I'm gonna support him through this.
and a little bit there that I find is a common subconscious pattern that makes us continue down that path is personally when I want to see the reality, or when I want to see the illusion be reality more than the truth be
Mm-hmm.
reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the truth is
Mm-hmm.
too hard to accept, you're
Because
just going to
for
be
me,
like,
everyone was right. Everyone was right. Well, I can't let that happen,
yeah,
because I feel ashamed and I feel all these terrible feelings because everybody else was right and I was wrong.
yeah,
Um, but the shame and the guilt and the I'm like realizing exactly what has just happened and what you've just done and what you've left. And like my career, I had a beautiful apartment on the Gold Coast. I had, my career was like, I literally had just had an awesome meeting with the CEO of my company who was promoting me. Like everything good for me was there,
mm,
except I felt lack in the love space, and I thought that that was what was going to make me feel better, I guess. And I believed that that was what I needed to do.
yeah. So you went all in on the love
Yeah,
aspect of life.
yeah,
And so after the Christmas with the family, then you're going into the next year and he gets out of lockup, or what was happening
yeah. So,
during him being
also,
in lockup,
yeah.
maybe?
So I was lucky. I was working in a job that I earned pretty decent, okay money with, but I picked up a second job as well at a bar doing cocktails. So I was working two jobs to try and pick up the slack for the bills, the house, his stuff. More like I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Plus, I also had to go and visit him twice. Or, well, I tried. He wanted me to try and get over there both days. I felt the need to get over there because I needed to make sure, like, you know, that was my job to go and make sure that he was all right. Which was about an hour and a quarter drive. So between working the two jobs, going over there on the weekend,
Mm,
that was for 4 months straight. I did that. So that was exhausting, embarrassing at my job, because I was like, you know what, I'm just going to tell them that I've just literally just started this job and he's been incarcerated, for DV stuff that he didn't, that wasn't his fault. And that's the story that I told everyone. I told my family, I told my friends and everyone, and they were like, wow, like that sucks for him. It really sucks. And I was like, it does, the poor thing. Let's help him.
mm, mm,
Because that's what I just, yeah, I wanted to believe that that was the case. And when he got out of jail, I did feel like he was a different person than when he went in. You know, there's a correctional facility, but he got into doing some exercise and eating better, all that sort of stuff. Like obviously it's jail, but yeah. So he was a different, like the person that I thought that he was going to be when he got out, but gradually it just started to slip away and um, just went back to how it was, and then just kept going even deeper into um, getting worse and worse. Mainly around drinking. When we both drank, there seemed to be issues, or even if just one of us did, it was no good for either one of us, which is, I admit that as well. Um, just managed to be able to trigger each other, but you know, even having words with each other doesn't condone splitting someone's face open either. But you know, some family members were pretty willing to try and make sure that the blame was always shared, and that I must have done something to trigger it and things like that. So apart from it being terrible, I still also had other people that were in kind of like, with that kind of stuff in my face, and
Mm.
it just was terrible.
When did the physical violence enter the relationship?
Mm, 1920. It must have been around the middle of, after he got probably the end of 2020, I think.
And when
There
did you
was a
start the
couple of
relationship?
instances, uh, end of 2019,
Okay, yeah.
about a year in. So that, but a jail sentence in a year in. I think there was a few events that I, you know, usually alcohol fueled. Don't even know what, just an argument, and then it would be, yeah, getting
Continue
thrown around.
escalating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in the same time, I threw bottles, and I got to like points where I was that triggered and emotional that, I did things as well, but not to the point of actually trying to kill him. It was more just like pushing away and like,
Yeah.
things like that. But I did have play my own part in things as well, so I do accept my own responsibility in that type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think, like you said, despite whatever you've done, there's no justification for someone to, a male especially, to use that power to then actually inflict harm on a female.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So, do you remember the first, or it was probably alcohol fueled, so you don't remember when it first happened?
Yeah, it just the events were always the same in a way that, yeah, it would escalate quite quickly over like a triggering event, where it was almost like it was either something like he'd try and call me out on something and then try and prove it. So there was a lot of like hacking into my phone, hacking into my emails, trying to sort of trip me up on something, or there was always some sort of thing back on the back end behind it. Um, and initially, the first couple of times, there was alcohol involved, a bit blurry, to be honest. There was a bit like, I'm like, I don't, all I remember were bits and pieces of it, and it's like me being on the floor, my head through the wall. There was always him kneeling on my chest and strangling me. It was sort of like the same thing that he would do. Um, just the superhuman strength that he managed to have in those moments too. Like initially, I usually would submit and kind of was like, I can't believe this is happening. But as it went on, I started to actually try and fight back. Or then towards the end, I felt like I had to fight first. So it was actually kind
Mhm.
of would have been playing into his favor as such, because I deeply was like, if something happens here, he's going to kill me. Um, and the last time he actually verbally said he was going to, and then he wasn't going to let me out of the house, and that he was going to kill as well. So our daughter. Yeah, just it escalated. It just went, from bad to worse. One of his ex partners, she was petrified, because she said it's just he like one. I remember her having a conversation with her one day. I'm not sure if I won't mention who she is, but um, she was worried because she said it's escalating so much. She's like, even from the stuff that happened with us, like it's terrifying because she's like, he never split my face. Like my face was split open at one point and he'd knocked me out and like clean out on the sidewalk. And my whole face was like, my mouth was split open, and she just couldn't believe. She's like, he never hit me in the face. He never hit me anywhere where anyone could see it. Um, and things like that. So it was like, and almost that feeling of being like, at least he didn't do that to me. And it I didn't think in my head that I was trying not to obviously think that it was getting worse and worse.
Mm.
But the same thing, like when I was pregnant with our daughter, he abused me then physically, and I just had to lay in a ball and just hold my belly and be like, please don't let this happen. Like I can't believe that you would do that with our daughter inside my belly. But just as it went on, the more that I fought back, it was almost like the more energy he pulled off me, and he was stronger, and it was scarier and worse every time. But the last time was definitely just a whole different thing because I'd gotten to the point where I'd split up with him. I had seen a psychiatrist because I was like, I need to make sure that I'm okay mentally. Like I started to feel good. I was getting back into the gym and everything. And one night he come around and just snapped over something really minor. Totally didn't expect it. So there was no, well, on my end, there wasn't any drugs or alcohol. Like there wasn't anything else involved, for me to be triggering anything. It was just a night at home, and hey, like our daughter was asleep. So I think a lot of the time using that as an excuse is a good way to cover it up as well.
Mm.
I feel like in the past, but once again, still taking on my own, like I had my own stuff that I hadn't dealt with in my own triggers and stuff. And we argued, and I sometimes was the one to start it. So yeah, not trying to rationalize it either. Like I know people go, oh, but you didn't deserve to,
Yeah.
almost get killed. But
No, well, that's the
I
thing.
try
Even
to,
if,
I know what my actions were throughout some of it. And it's like, even though like subconsciously I knew that it was because I was literally fighting for my life.
mm,
It's hard to really know what people would do in that sort of situation as well. And it's just mind blowing to look back and see exactly what happened and where I got to as a person. And it's really actually terrifying.
yeah, absolutely. I guess as there's that gradual devolvement and progression in some areas that it's a little bit by a little bit, and where you end up once you're out of it, you're like, whoa, that's such a contrast.
Yeah.
That's shocking to think about now. But I
Yeah.
think at the
100%.
time, you're probably just trying to, maintain. Like there'd be a level of not wanting to actually be looking at the truth of what's happening to you because you're like, it's easier to survive by not facing that.
100%. And you're already exhausted. Like you're already just exhausted. Like, um, uh, part of it too, I've had to work through the feeling of being like, well, I enabled it. Like I did all these things for him that people like. I thought that me doing that was going to make me feel more valued by him, and he wouldn't feel the need to treat me in a terrible way that people didn't know about. Um, like I tried to do everything that I possibly could for him. I made sure that he had everything. I did courses for him, like so that he didn't have to do it and stuff like that he needed
Mm.
for work. All that sort of stuff that I was like, I was doing that. Plus, I was trying to work and look after our daughter. Like it was just there was a lot and stuff to do with his hobbies. Like I was pretty heavily. I put a lot of time and money into that as well. And to be in the back end, just be like beaten down mentally and physically, it was. It's almost like you feel. I felt like I'm strong, like I'm strong enough, like I'm stronger, I can do this. And I know that he loves me. I just know that he loves me, and that feeling of being like, how can someone that can do that to you be also the place that you want to be the most and you feel the safest? Like that's
Mm.
scary, it's scary stuff.
And would you
Like even
say,
now I could be like, I wouldn't mind just having a hug. And
yeah,
like he tried to kill me. It's the most insane thing.
yeah, I suppose that's the challenge when someone's,
Conditioning.
yeah, condition you and, I guess cut off all of your other sources of connection. and you had that really intense connection to begin with. And I think, that bonding does go a long way.
Yeah,
Within yourself, there was probably a sense of, well, there's that. And if I can just get the pieces right, if I can do, the things that will make him happy, and if I can,
he'll love
cover all
me.
this, then it will click into place and then everything will be okay.
He'll feel better. He'll feel better, so he won't hurt me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That trying to follow that and get things right, I think would keep a lot of people in such a dynamic, that
Oh,
taking
just
responsibility and being like, oh, I can change this and make it happen.
yeah,
And there's something to be worked out here. There's a puzzle to
yeah,
be solved.
yeah, yep. And also is a bit of a thing about what I've been learning about myself and on my own healing journey and things like that, and uncovering things from past traumas and things. Like it's not the first time I've been in a kind of relationship with this type of dynamic, and you know mental and physical abuse type stuff. And I've been in some pretty crappy situations with people before because I felt like I wanted to be able to fix them, wanted
Mm.
to be able to help them, and I wanted to, if I just love them enough, it'll give them enough, and they'll be able to change. And I was just completely abandoning myself in that process as well. But in
Mm.
this in this instance, I completely abandoned who I was as a person because I felt like I didn't have any other choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That abandoning of yourself is something that I would imagine to sit with you afterwards, where there's then a forgiveness of self that you would require.
Yeah, and still working through it.
Mm.
Still will work through that for a while, definitely.
We'll come back to that, but I wanted to ask, so in the beginning, it was like, sounds like jealousy was creating a lot of the triggering from his side, trying to hack into the phone, email, and that is what kind of got that dynamic starting of like escalation. And then over time, was it things other than jealousy that would trigger him?
Um, there was no real. That was the thing too, is I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell when things were going to blow up and what over, because there was so
Mm.
many bits and pieces that could potentially trigger him or myself for different reasons.
So then you're walking on eggshells around everything.
Yeah, yep. Um, like and in the beginning it was like, when if it got to a point where it would blow up enough that there'd be physical abuse, he would, it seemed like he would kind of snap out of it and have a big thing and be like, I'm so sorry, I can't believe it, oh, like quite quickly. And as it went down the track and things got worse, and it was like, there were weapons involved, and I was getting chased down the hall with a knife and all that sort of stuff, where he was more decisive about what the outcome was going to be at the end of the abuse,
Mm.
which was petrifying for me. And because it hadn't really been like that in the past,
Just
it's
going
just,
from like a moment of emotional outburst to premeditation almost.
yeah, like I'm like, this has been planned. It is, he has planned this. Like it was sort of like, it's
Mm.
not just a, yeah,
Spur of the moment.
yeah, it was kind of a really, I don't even know the word to describe the moment of just being like, oh, crap. Um, like the things like, while he was physically abusing me, he'd tell me, like one time he told me that he had hacked into my Gmail account, and I had like a folder called Nespresso for my coffee, and I'd put DV pictures in there, like from when he'd split my face open and that, because he used to make me delete it. Um, because he's like, you're going to use it against me. I'm like, no, 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 I'm not like, at the time I was like, how could you think that I would betray you like that? That's how bad it gets. But he was laughing, saying, "You think that you're going to press charges about that one event where like I knew what he was talking about," and he's just like, "I've already hacked into your emails and deleted them. So if there's no evidence, then it never happened." While he's abusing me, but I had already sent those photos. Other people had copies of them and stuff. But just that And even that, when that happened, I still managed to push that down and be like, oh no, he won't do that, won't happen again. Even though he's literally telling me to my face that he's trying to erase my story. Like,
Mm,
it's
mm.
dumbfounding to me.
I suppose in the moment, like, let's say, you have him abuse you, and then, there's that heightened intensity of
Mm.
like going through that, and then it would kind of like come down. And like, how long would it take him, like, after you had an escalation for him to kind of calm down?
Well, varied, but the last event, because it was the worst and it's the one that sticks in my head the most. It took ages to try and de-escalate the situation where I was petrified. I was trying to sort of either, because he was only aiming it at me to start off with, but then he threatened to kill our daughter. As soon as that happened, something clicked in me, and I just went, "This isn't." I never thought that he would do anything to her, even though I knew that he had done stuff to his other children in the past. Um, I just still was naive enough to think that he wouldn't do anything to our daughter. But as soon as that was said, something in me clicked, and I went, "I'm going to have to submit here because he will kill me or her or both of
Mm.
us." Um, you know, after I don't know how long time. I have no idea what time frames are in these situations, but that last one, I remember he almost knocked me. He punched me like my face, like there was blood everywhere. But he was strangling me on the couch. I remember looking up at the ceiling, and I just was looking at the light, and I was like, "This is the last breath that I'm going to take," because his knees were on my chest, and I was trying to get him off me, and I couldn't. And I remember just thinking, "This is it." Like I always thought that in that type of situation, I would be able to get out of it, or I'd outsmart someone, or I'd be strong enough, or something like. Because I'm not a little person. I truly believe that I would be able to get, and I had that fleeting moment of feeling like I was losing myself, and I was like, "This is it. It's actually going to happen." Um, but from that moment, I don't know what happened. I was still trying to fight and kick and scratch and whatever I could do, and he got off me. But after he sort of after I pulled my energy back and I just looked at him and he was telling me to kill him, I just was
Mm.
like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. It's not happening. If you want to do it, go ahead, but I'm not going to do that. Um, he just kept repeating the same thing over and over again, like yelling it in my face. And then he kind of stopped. I sat on the ground. He sat on the ground, and I held him, and he just laid in my lap, and he just laid there like just I didn't know what to say either, but I just was like, I'm just going to hold you. It was really weird, just weird. And then I just because we'd broken up, I just said, like, he was sleeping in the spare room. I just said, "Do you want to go to bed?" And he just went, "Yep," and just got up, and I just followed him, and he laid down. I grabbed a bag of peas out of the um, freezer to put him on my nose because my nose was split. And I just put it on my face and laid down, and his head hit the pillow, and he just started snoring like that. And I just laid on my back with the peas, and I was like, I don't I don't know what I'm gonna fucking do now. Like, I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, was it was it like something came over him? Like, do you think, the whole possession type thing, not we don't want to take away from his responsibility, but like
No,
the energy that he
I always felt there was definitely, I always said that it was demonic. The only way that I could explain it was demonic. And I guess they're going down a bit of a spiritual journey too since then, and a bit of an awakening spiritually. I haven't really come to a conclusion sort of about how I exactly feel about the interconnection with mental health and spirituality and things like that. But I had done a bit of research on, you know, the demonic side of it and the attaching to narcissist bodies and stuff like that. Because in the moments when he was like that, his eyes were completely black, and it was like he wasn't there.
Mm.
Whether it's a mental health bipolar schizophrenic type thing, whether it is another entity, like I have no, I don't not believe that there was something like that at play on a deeper scale. I just don't know exactly what I believe and what it is. I just know that in the moments that it was, it felt like it wasn't him that was there, and that it
Mm.
was the only way that I could describe it was demonic. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
That's
we both had spiritual beliefs of things like that as well. I know I myself have had moments where if I've been drinking, I've been told by clairvoyance I shouldn't drink because I can have bad spirits enter my body and things like that. So along that depth of that, I do believe in that sort of stuff. So I do believe it. Um, Whether or not he, was doing the things to be able to, I don't think he was making the steps in progress wise to be able to get rid of that way of self. But being incarcerated could potentially be helping him in that way because he's not. But he'd be still, you can still do stuff in jail and stuff that obviously isn't too good for you. But yeah, just it's it's a tough one because in those moments, there was definitely those moments of looking in his eyes and being like, "That's next level." But his eyes
yeah.
could change color a lot too. We sort of, there was different patterns that we noticed with him in his health and things like that. So
That's
yeah, there's
interesting.
a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How was
Especially
he?
to do with his eyes.
Yeah. How was
Yeah.
he in acknowledging his actions?
Um, I feel like it was better in the beginning, but as it got worse, it tapered off. Um, Probably like for me, I feel like empathically, I'm like I just wanted to um help him through it. Like I could just feel that when things were getting worse and worse, and he lost his job and all this stuff was happening, everything was crumbling. I could feel energetically that there was just dark. It was just this darkness, and he could not get out of whatever he was in. And I could feel it and sense it, and I felt sorry for him because I could feel it myself, and I couldn't imagine how scary that could be. Like for someone to see it on the outside and feel energetically what was happening. It was I felt so sorry for him because I was like, that must be just terrible to be having to go and not be able to explain it to me because I used to be able to be like, what's going on? Like, can you try and explain it to me? And I might be able to understand, but he couldn't really do that either. Whether or not he just didn't want to say it because it was too dark or what, I'm not sure. Um, but
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah. And that can certainly play into the whole entity energy surrounding you, that darkness.
yeah, 100%. We both had that in us too, and I knew that as well. But I feel like in our instance with our relationship, like I probably was mirroring back a lot of light to him that he needed to change. But instead of doing that, he was triggering the darkness back to me. So we were
Mm.
mirroring each other, but I was mirroring the light to him and he couldn't handle it. And he was mirroring the dark back to me. And I was kind of taking it on and embodying it, but it had something had to give somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that last event, what happened the next morning?
I laid in bed that night on my back the whole night instead of the ceiling. I actually remember saying to him, I'm like, if I go to sleep, you're going to kill me. And he just was like, no, don't be stupid.
And
And
I
I was
meant to
like,
ask, at what point did he threaten your daughter in that dynamic?
oh, like it escalated really quickly. Like in that last event, he kind of, because I usually wear tights and with the phone pocket things and a watch, but he grabbed my phone out. I think what started it was he grabbed my phone out, tried to go into it, and I'd changed my lock password because we weren't together, and I was like, you could always get into my phone the whole time in our relationship. You hacked into my emails anyway, so you could get into anything whenever you wanted to. I just, I must have been, I don't know why I changed it, but I just felt like if he did happen to go through it at some point, if he found one little thing that he wasn't happy with, that would be enough to set him off. So, even though we weren't together, so he grabbed my phone, smashed it, smashed my watch, smashed his phone, smashed any way that I could communicate with anyone to fucking call the police or friends or family or anything. Our house was like Fort Knox too. It was really like double brick. If I screamed, people wouldn't be able to hear us anyway. Um, and I don't know time frames, but it's probably halfway through the ordeal of a couple of hours. That he threatened our daughter. He was telling me to kill him. He was screaming with the knife, saying, "I want you to kill me, and if you don't kill me, I will kill you and her." So I was like, "I'm not going to kill you." So I kind of felt like it was like I'm just going to have to wait it out, but I didn't know how that would look because I was petrified. But I also knew that I couldn't be aggressive towards him because it was just going to make
Escalate
it,
either way.
yeah, yeah,
And him encouraging, asking you, telling you to kill
yeah,
him, otherwise he's going to kill you.
yeah,
That totally sounds like such a demonic thing to say, right?
a
You know,
hundred percent. And the other thing he said at the end of it was, "You saved me."
mm,
And it's sat with me ever since because I'm like, if we were some sort of relationship where we're mirroring things back to each other and it's me, if it's half of me or part of me or my stuff that I need to heal with my spiritual stuff, um, it sort of is weird to try and understand in my head that because I didn't kill him, I saved myself. Like there's some sort of weird like correlation. I can't really get my head around it at the moment, but it's something that's always stood out to me too because it was like he was thanking me because I didn't do what he was asking me to do.
yeah. Well, to me, that's almost like the entity that was, and let's
Mm.
say,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever was working through him in that moment was trying to get you to take some action, which
yes,
then would have obviously killed him and then
yes,
damaged your life.
yeah,
And then once that kind of energy, you didn't meet that with anger, you like met it with humility.
yeah.
And then the veil
It's like
dropped.
it went. Yeah, yeah,
And then he's like, from like a more truer place, he's like, you saved me. That's the
yeah.
way it sounds to me.
That's how it felt. And then I didn't realize until I did some bit of research after everything that I didn't realize that the best way to stop demonic entities is to not give them any energy. So the more that I was fighting, that's why everything was getting worse. But like, who in their right mind is going to stand there when they think that they're facing something demonic that's going to kill them and just go, nope, nope,
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that, and just trust that they're not going to just drive a knife through your throat. Like, it's
counterintuitive
yeah, yeah,
to your very survival instinct.
no, 100%.
And I guess, in a lot of spiritual teachings, there's things along the lines of you can't fight the darkness, fire with fire, etc.
Mm,
That I guess ultimately, when you do get into a state of love or peace or whatever it may be, and then if someone's being reactive and you're in that state, you're not creating further
mm,
reactivity for them to
yeah.
attach to.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds fucking well and good in when we're just talking about it, but when
And
you're
then
in it,
try
I tell
that.
you what,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah, no,
100%. And that's the
yeah.
thing. You can say these things that, may be
You're
true,
like, oh yeah,
but add fight or flight, high adrenaline,
all the
knife
stuff
point.
over the years and everything like building up, and you're just like, and
Yeah,
I think it's one of those things too where I think about it now, and I think you. I think about how much love I must have had for this person to not turn around and go, okay, because you've just ruined me from to the core and done so many. You've lied and manipulated and gaslit and slandered my own name, and you've made people think of me as a person that I'm not, and all this sort of stuff. Like, for me to just stand there and just be like, No, I think it's on another level. It's just like that's a whole different level of love, if there's a better sense of the word. But yeah, it's runs deep, whatever it was.
Did you feel like that moment was a bit of a karmic release in certain ways?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. There was definitely ties to stuff to do with our past lives and lineages and um all that sort of stuff. It's definitely and it's not the first time I've had that happen in a relationship either, where it's been um people that have a lot of dark and a lot of things around lingering, or people that lean towards suicide and depression and drugs and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's not the first time I've been around or with someone that has experienced that type of life, or been in that sort of situation where I've had them uh, coming at me in that sort of way. And then for me, and that's not the first time that I can clearly remember in other instances where I've had that thing come over me where I've like took my power back and just went no,
Mm,
in when they're
mm.
threatening my life, and I'm like, I don't get how I can do that because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Clear to me, it would seem like there's a very
I,
powerful part within you that is able to step
yeah,
back.
potentially reflecting my own past lives and ancestors as well, I would say.
Hmm. So from there, what was the sequence of events that occurred after that kind of critical moment of everything?
Yeah, so I lay there all night. I didn't know how I was going to get out of the situation. I still, in the morning, I was sort of laying there and I was like, he was snoring, and I thought, I don't really know how I'm going to, because where we were is a rural town. The police station never had any police in it. I would have had to have driven um, to the closest town that had a police station, but his hobby was racing cars. So I was like, even in our cars, if I tried to throw our daughter in the car, which I did try and do, I thought he would probably catch me in a car because he's quite talented in that sense. So it kind of didn't make sense to me to do that. I probably would have given it a crack, but I don't think it would have worked because I knew that he's had instances in the past with ex partners where he's run them off the road and things like that. So, um, you know, when I was looking at paperwork from his past, I noticed that, but didn't think anything of it. Anyway, what ended up happening was I managed to get a bag together, went to go and try and leave in the morning, thought he was still asleep, and he heard the roller door of the garage. And because I heard the garbage truck, and I thought, well, at least there'll be someone outside. Like, if I run outside, he won't do it. I'm like, surely he won't do anything if there's other people around. Um, and I didn't know how he was going to be when he woke up either. Um, I just wasn't, I just was not sure of anything at that point. Um, threw our daughter in the car, and he come out, grabbed the car keys, pulled the car keys out, was manic trying to stop me. Ended up yelling out, and the neighbour ended up coming out. I didn't realise he actually was an ex-cop. Um, and he had Haley. She was crying. He was, you know, petrified, like he was petrified. Well, that's how he was presenting, and I genuinely thought that he was, because I feel like he was like, I know what's gonna happen next, type thing. But even it took me a while. Even at that point, we got inside the neighbours. I told him he just had to stay away from us and blah blah blah. I still was reluctant to call the police then, because I truly was like, it wasn't him. I don't believe that it
Mm,
was him that was doing that. So it was part of me feeling like, what's the right thing to do? Because all I wanted to do was comfort him in the depths of my soul. Like, all I wanted to do was just go and be like, it's okay, everything's going to be okay. But in reality, I couldn't let it go because I was like, this isn't going to change. Like, it's just, I can't keep doing this, and I can't, now that you're starting to threaten our daughter, it can't happen anymore. Um, and yeah, I was not far off death at that point either. So I couldn't. I had nothing left in me to try and help. As much as I still remember sitting there just being like, I can't do it. I just and the neighbors weren't telling me to either. They were like, this is like, this is your decision. But I was like, I can't allow this to happen anymore. And it's still like I still now in my gut feel bad. Like I still feel sorry about it because I just feel bad. I feel sorry for him that he could do that to someone, even though it was me.
Yeah. Yeah. I see so many conflicting emotions there.
Yeah, yeah,
But even let's say there was the spiritual implication of something acting through him. Let's say you are embodying that energy. There's still a part of you that's allowing it, even if it's like a 95% influence towards a certain direction. I believe
yeah,
there's still your conscience and consciousness has the ability to choose, even if it's a
yeah,
0.1%. It's like someone in
yeah,
the throes of addiction, super hard to get out of, but it
yeah,
doesn't mean it can't be done.
100%. And going through what I've just sort of been going through myself and my whole life, I've struggled with addictions and behaviors and things like that that aren't did me no help at all. And but learning now in a different light that when I remove that and remove those people, even though I've had to do it over and over and over and over again for 35 years, there is the light does come eventually. I'm telling you, it happens. Like I've already had instances this year where I'm just like, oh, God, I could just go and party and that would just make things better for me, but it doesn't. And I chose not to. And every time I've made a better decision, something better has come in for me. And
Mm,
it's, I think it's just one of those things that I know what it's like to, and I know what it's like to be in that position of not feeling like you're ever going to get out of it. And the only way is death. So um, it's not something that I haven't been through myself before either. So, but yes, everybody has, especially when you're lucky enough to have people around you that are willing to help, even though you push everyone away, which I've also done. He always had that support around him, regardless of whether he thought he did or not. I used to book appointments for him to go and see psychiatrists and psychologists and all different sorts of things, and he just would cancel them and make excuses that other things were more important and things. And um, at the end of the day, taking that kind of, he may think differently about that too now. Like I have no idea, but it's not my responsibility to try and understand that anymore. And um, yeah, everyone has choices, and at the end of the day, everyone does know what fuel. Everyone would know subconsciously what fuels it and what doesn't, and it just depends on what you want to do with that, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Where do you think
like
that?
everyone knows that what's wrong and right. There's no wrong and right, but bad behaviors, bad people, bad things like that. Like you'd know, this is whether or not you want to act on it and make changes or not.
Totally. And I think the choices you make take you down a certain path. And as you get down that path, your life, your feelings of self, the energy you're in reflect those sequence of choices as well.
Definitely. But it's easy to just keep on going down the negative. Like it's easy to breed like negative breeds negative. Like it's easy to snowball down into it. But and sometimes you do have to go over it again and again. And there's nothing's linear. Like every growth and everything. Like of course it's not a linear process, and everyone falls back as long as you just keep on trying. But the whole time, I think I felt with our relationship was that there wasn't there was a lack of effort for actually trying to be better that I couldn't. That's part of what I couldn't forgive as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Where do you, and maybe before I ask that, how was the process to go the police route?
Uh, the because of his record, like I think he's breached every order that he's ever been on. So he's had intensive corrections orders, he's been to jail, he's had ABOs and stuff like that. I think he's pretty much breached every one of them. The police were good. They had like it was at the time they had the DV unit. I think they were in a town not far away from us. So a heap of people like showed up. Like there was all the support and everything there. But then after he was arrested, um, it I wasn't happy with the process of what happened afterwards. Like I got appointed a caseworker. She was fine. I wanted to be more involved in. I wanted to see him because I was like, if it's anything like the past, if he claims that he doesn't remember or whatever it is, like I kind of was like, I want him. I need to be able to see him, and I would like to be. I want to be in court and see what happens and stuff like that because it's just I don't want to avoid it. Like that's just who I am. But then I know that there's other people that I've spoken to that have been in situations like that. Are like, I don't want to see him. I can't do it. Whereas I was like, no, he's going to see it. You're going to see that my face is bruised and battered and everything. Like, I want him to see that I can see him see it, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to get up and do an victim impact statement, and I had, all this thing that I was going to make sure that my story was heard, not for the wrong reasons. I wanted it to be more of an empowering thing for women that have been in similar situations. And he he took an early guilty plea, which wasn't told that was a thing that could happen. They just said, no, we just want to keep you away from the courthouse. And I was like, well, okay, whatever. I didn't know what he was charged with, what he'd been charged with. And I was like, and then again, too, seeing then how the solicitors and the police and everything had worked everything out as to what he actually got charged with. Because I'm like, it's attempted murder, right? Like, if you verbally tell someone that that's what's going to happen and you strangle them to almost the point of them dying, like if you're strangling someone, you're trying to kill them, basically. Like that's how I see it, and that's how it felt, and it almost happened more than once. And to be honest, I never even thought about it afterwards. I just was just one day, I think it was about 3 months later, I was like, hey, someone said, oh, what did you get charged with? And I went, I don't know. I have no idea. And I was like, I have no idea what he got charged with. And because he took an early guilty plea, I can't remember the charges off the top of my head, but anyway, it wasn't attempted murder. It was, I'm not going to say because I don't know the exact things, but anyway, it wasn't as the bigger charges that I probably thought potentially could have happened and should have
been
for
warranted.
what happened. Yeah. There was like the little damaged property. There was like a couple of for the phone and the watch, physical assault. There wasn't any, I think before he'd been charged with like take and detain, where he's like taken the keys out of someone's car and like held them there, which he did with me, but that wasn't noted, even though there was like my keys were everywhere. Just a heap of things like that where all the little ones were there. And because he took an early guilty plea, I couldn't even try and recoup any of those costs from him. So not only did I have to pay for all of the damage to the house where my head had gone through and everything, breaking the lease, getting rid of all the shit in the house after I moved out to relocate, a new phone, I didn't have an Apple Watch for ages, so I was like, it's not necessary, I don't need it. But I needed a phone for work. Just all that sort of stuff. I never got the chance to even try and recoup any costs from him because he took an early guilty plea. And I just was like, this sucks. And I tried to get back into full-time work, which I thought I would be able to do, because I'm like, I'm not going to be have any assistance financially from him, for our daughter, not for me. And that just the bills were just piling up straight away. Dealing with Centrelink was absolutely horrific. Apart from the fact that I saw myself as, I was a businesswoman, and I was a broker. So I was like, I don't want to go sit in Centrelink and have to deal with all this stuff. I don't have the time because I'm getting paid by the hour to work, and it's the only way I can feed our child. It took ages and ages and ages to get any. I didn't think I was going to get any money. I just thought that I'd be able to get help with rent assistance, which all took forever. They had to end up putting a case. I got no payments for about 3 months. I went in there so much, could never get onto the families line. It was horrific. But meanwhile, his brother went in and who was not going through a very. He'd been in and out of jail his whole life. Anyway, I took him into town one day for him to start up to go on the dole, whatever it's called, job seeker. He got a payment the next day. I've been trying for 3 months, and I was a single parent to try and get some sort of assistance, and I still was told that they wouldn't pay me anything because I wasn't making enough effort to try and recoup child support from him. And I was like, he's in jail. They never asked me for any of that information. I'm not stupid. I got my head bashed in, but I'm not stupid. Um, just all that sort of stuff was just horrific. Like the financial side of it was just, it made me sick. And everything was in my name. His ute, I had his ute there, which I ended up selling, but I had to put money into to sell. No one offered to help me get rid of that or anything. Just the amount of money that it cost to live on my own, plus look after a daughter, plus pay for stuff, pay for things, like everything just blew out in cost wise, and it was just terrible.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like considering the early guilty plea really just almost was, yeah, served him in a lot of ways and just
Yeah.
almost got him off the hook in a lot of, not having to
Yeah.
face you, not having to
Yeah.
pay legal costs, just, yeah,
Yep. And
getting a
then he
lesser
tried to
charge.
appeal, and then he tried to appeal his own. And I didn't know it was someone had sent me the court listings and said, "This isn't this him?" A few months later, he tried to appeal his own early guilty plea, and he got a couple of months off because he appealed it. I was like, "What the?" It was,
This is a problem that people who know to play the system can
yeah,
do so really well.
yeah.
And the
But they're
system in
guided
this,
to.
yeah, well, that
This is the
too.
thing. It's not necessarily what they know. It's what they're guided. That's what who is involved with them when it happens. Because he got sentenced to three. I think I don't know the full facts. I can't remember. I've got the paperwork, but it was around 3 years. So, but he's only incarcerated, so he'll be eligible for parole after a year and a half. But if you king hit someone at the pub, because it's, I hate how a lot of the DV stuff can be romanticized in the way of acts of love and things like that. Where if it's in your own home, it's not the same as if you king hit someone and you get 5 years. Like I don't. And when he has had previous charges for the same thing, breached intensive corrections orders, been incarcerated, all that sort of stuff, and he gets a year and a half locked up. Like I just all that, and the fact that I got pushed out in a way that I couldn't. I didn't know. I was just kept in the dark about it. I had no idea.
And that uncertainty isn't great to live with. And
Well,
also,
they sort of played it like, you just need to focus on your daughter and blah blah. Yeah, I know, but where is he? Like I'm
mm,
like, I'm still living in fear of thinking, what if he does get out? And I know that people from his past were also worried about that as well. And I'm thinking I've got to do what I can to make sure that everyone's safe. Like it's not a matter of, then that's when your reality kicks in and you go, all that empathy I felt for this person that I loved, and if they, oh, poor them, they had an entity attached to them and they just couldn't control it. Regardless, I'm a mother. I have to provide a level of safety for my daughter and myself, for myself first and foremost. But you forget about that completely. It's like whatever, as long as I'm keeping my daughter safe and secure and comfortable and fed and having a good life, you lose sight of that reality. So I've done it time and time again where I've gone, yeah, I could probably oversee it just because I just think that I could, but it's not in reality. Like that's literally putting her safety at risk. Like
mm,
it's her life at risk for for me just feeling like I could potentially have it in me to just be like, oh, everything's all right. Like you couldn't
mm,
help it when they could have.
yeah. What do you think that comes from, that ability to forgive and
I just, because I've been through a lot of my own stuff, a lot of my own traumas, a lot of bits and pieces over the years. I've been to some pretty dark places myself. I've never tried to kill anyone or anything like that. I've always had good intentions for people, regardless of how it's perceived. But um, I've been to the depths of hell myself for through different things, and I know, I know from myself and what I believe is I know how much I've changed and what the work that I've done and how much it's changed me literally as a person. So I know that it's people can do it, but um, I think that's why. I think I just because I have so much belief in the fact that I think that people can change, and I see people for their highest self and who they have the potential to be, and I want to try and help them get to that, which is where the shadow course comes into it as well. But um, I just truly believe that they can. So it makes it hard to then distinguish in my spiritual realm what I see as people's highest self and whether they are at that point or not, and then the fact that the facts of reality and the fact that at the end of the day, keeping people safe and things like that is the priority over everything else.
100%. That's something I've really, a paradox I've tried to resolve, which is on one hand, no one's beyond redemption, which I really, truly, deeply believe. But
Yeah,
on the other hand, you have a leopard doesn't change its spots.
yeah, I know.
And I've, a pattern that I've had is with actually helping people out financially because someone's like, oh no, like I'm stressed and like like this is happening and I'm like about to be on the street and I'm like, oh, it's just money, all right, yeah, like easy solution.
Yeah,
And what I've learned over time, money's not the problem.
no,
It's often the patterns and the mindset. And I've literally resolved this to the point where like probably a year and a half ago a guy reached out to me. He was like, look, from my past, probably in a bit of the thug drug scene and stuff. And like, he's like, look, I've got no one else to ask any money. Like I'm basically on the street and I like just need like a hostel to stay in. I was like, look, here's $200. Like all the best. And then I spoke to him on the phone and, he's like, oh, like gave me a bit of a sob story. And then, I just need X, Y, Z. And then like,
yep,
yeah, just began the money
mm-hmm.
glitching. And then,
Mm.
they get your trust, get you involved in the story. And I'm, a problem solver. So I'm like, oh yeah, oh, if you just need, a bit of this and some
Yeah,
bread
that's
and
what's
that.
going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and then, as they kind of get that floodgate happening, like, there's like a little bit like, oh, you've given
Yeah.
200 and then you've given like another 100. Oh, well, another 100. And then you get to the point of being pot committed where you've now
Mm.
invested so much, you're like, oh, well, what's a little bit more? Oh, and,
Okay.
I've got them to this point. Now, if I
Yeah.
give up, then I've given up everything that we've been
Yes,
working to.
I've invested.
And, that's how scammers work as
I
well.
know. Well, this in the same situation. I people don't know, but I was actually funding part of what his hobby. I bought his race helmet for him. I paid for panels for his car, bits and pieces that I was doing, sending from the Gold Coast, and nobody knew about it because I wasn't even a thing to anyone apparently. But I thought that I was, and just all that sort of stuff. Where I was like, yeah, no, I'll talk because you've had a split, you've got the split family and you da da da, and you've been done over by these crazy chicks in your past and everything. Yeah, you know what? I'm really supportive of your career, your racing career, and I'm going to do this and blah blah blah. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And, it doesn't
like how
make
dumb.
it.
And then you go through the thing of being like, how dumb am I? Like,
Well,
that's
the thing
dumb.
is, people that you're describing, because I can think of a few in my own life, they tend to have really charismatic, magnetic energies.
Oh, so, and that's why everyone believes what they say.
Exactly.
Because I
And
believed it, and when I saw him in those moments, I was like, yes, that's who you are. That's who I love. But that's uh, fucking 3% of who you actually are as a person. But that 3% is big. Like
yeah,
what that is, and yeah, that magnetism and that how they hold it like that. Whatever that is some kind of special magic shit because
So,
it's enough to suck you in.
so my
Whether
theory
or
on
not
that,
that's actually who they are either, like that could potentially be who you are once you go and do all the work and all that sort of
yeah,
stuff. But once again, that's not
yeah,
my.
their
That's
potential.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because my experience with that and my theory is like, so if you imagine like all of us being individual fragments of one source of all, and they're like the ones that have projected out into the depths of
Mm.
darkness further than others. So they're actually more surrounded by darkness. But to
Yeah,
get to that far, that depth of darkness, it takes probably even more energy to reach that point. So there's actually
yes.
like this deep
So
spark
you,
of like
you
of goodness, of magic, of whatever you want to call it, but they're surrounded in such darkness that
that is exactly it. That I've never heard that type of. I've never heard that before, but that's exactly. It's almost like you feel like it's inspiring in a way
yeah,
because you're just like I know if you even if you've got a bit of that darkness in you, like everyone's got a bit, right? But like when you have actually kind of been through some pretty heavy shit, and you see that, you're like shit. If you can shine that, if you can be that thing, like in that as deep as that, like it's courageous to me. Like that's amazing. So if we can just work our way through all the other shit.
yeah.
But like that's not my job to do that either. But you feel like you're like, I can help them. I can help them do this.
And it's because you see something special in them, and that part of them makes you feel
Yeah.
something special.
Yeah.
So it makes
Yeah.
it, yeah, it makes it understandable, like how you'd be so invested when you're focused on that one aspect of them
Yeah.
that you could have blinders onto the rest of it.
Yeah. Especially when they're super amazing and talented at that thing. Like he was an Australian champion. It was one of the youngest people in his class to be an Australian champion. And like the potential there was like I was like, yes, I'm going to invest in this because I believe in you, and I
Mm.
believe when he was in that space, I was like, I believe that you are destined for great things, and everything, and he is whatever, but there's just so much other shit that was around it that he needed to heal and stuff that he was obviously avoiding, and all of the stuff that we all, in hindsight, know after, but yeah, pretty
And that can
you're
be,
right with the depth of the darkness is the thing.
it's difficult when someone's really good at something society deems as successful.
Yeah.
And you know that saying, like, if you love a book, don't meet the author.
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes we
Yes.
can correlate, oh, someone's doing all this amazing thing, or they're like the best actor, or whatever it is. They
Yeah.
must be a good person. They create amazing music. But what someone can create or do and who someone is isn't always correlated.
No, not all the time, no.
No. Yeah. So where are you at now with
So,
everything?
well, since then, so what was that? June. I'm terrible with timelines. Unless I'm crossing them in spirituality. Um, what June 2023. So about a year since that happened, that last event, he got incarcerated. Fought for my life in reality. Sorry. So for about 3 months, I yeah thought I was all right, but wasn't. Was kind of avoiding everything. Couldn't got to the point. Couldn't do my job anymore. Just couldn't focus. Was starting to feel. I hit this point where I remember being on the couch. It was probably a couple of weeks after it happened, actually. So I was still very sore. I had a lot of internal um, damage. I had to go to the hospital and stuff. So a lot of the stuff for me too, also because you couldn't see. Well, I did have bruises and he'd split my nose and everything, but it really didn't look too bad from the outside. Apart from that, I had just massive bruising on my face, and the getting out of bed was hard because I'd been thrown around and smashed into everything and all that sort of stuff. Which I forgot I'd pushed down also because until I tried, I didn't realize there was. Oh, that was the other thing. I didn't realize there was so many things you could claim, but you only had certain amount of time, like a crisis payment and all
Mm.
this shit that I missed out on that I didn't realize, it was pretty heartbreaking for me at the time because I just was like, that could have really made a massive difference financially. But it wasn't until I had to submit medical documents and I was like, oh, yeah, I did get a medical thing from the hospital when I went there. And when I read it, the medical terminology of what had happened to me, that was a massive thing. I went, oh my God. It was like I was reading it as being happened to someone else. And I started crying because I felt sorry for but it was
Wow.
me. Like just that sort of stuff. I think the whole way along was things that come up, and I was like, "Fuck, I really am really pushing this, not getting to the depths of it, of the reality of what it is either." Like it was really a weird moment for me when I read that. I was just like, "Fuck, that's terrible."
I
That
suppose
was me.
afterwards, there would have been a period of, when you're in an experience, you don't yet have the outside perspective. So you just,
Yeah,
this is your experience, your
what it
life,
is. Hmm.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. But then when you've had enough distance, other experiences, separation from that
Mm.
experience happening, then you get the ability to look back at it with hindsight
Mm.
and you can see it from a bit of a higher perspective from the outside and you can go, oh, that's happened. And then there's a level of truth and acceptance that would be required because
Yeah,
you
then
can
you got to
then,
go through. It's like every time you up level something, and then you got to, and then you feel sorry for yourself, and then you feel guilty because you're like, I can't believe I put my daughter in that situation, and oh my God, that's been happening. Just the cycle of all of the emotions through all of it is so exhausting. Like it's so exhausting, necessary, but friggin' exhausting and fucking hard. Like it's so hard. I don't. Anyone that can I never expect people to understand, but it's just the level, the depth of how hard it is I think that's what's hard to accept is that it's overshadowed until it happens to someone or someone close to you. And it's tough. But
that's what
anyway,
I was going to say. People find it really hard to empathize with something they can't physically see. And
yes.
unless it's happened to them or someone they closely know.
Yeah, 100%. But also too, like I was saying, like when people, when you, because I was pretty blunt with how I remember going to the supermarket afterwards, and it was, I had like massive bruising on under my eyes and stuff, and this lady said, "Oh, have you been in a car accident?" I said, "No, my ex-partner nearly killed me." I just like it just came out, and then I went, I I didn't think because I've been living in my own reality for so long, I was just like, well, that's what happened. And she
Yeah.
just went, I like she just was like, I don't know. And I was like, oh, I
Was that a bit
I didn't
much?
really feel
Whoops.
yeah. I just was like, well, that's my truth. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess being in my own sort of because I had been sort of isolated for so long, and then I was isolating myself after it too, without really realizing it. Yeah, that was one of those weird moments where I was just like, that's a bit too far for me. I probably didn't need to say that. But um, also, the more that I got along, it's part of the reason why I wanted to get on and have a chat about it, just as an awareness thing. And that is that because people, like when I spoke to the head of the DV unit for the region that was involved with my case, he said it was it was the worst one that they had on their file. And
Mm.
I said, well, that's because anything after what happened to me is debt. That was the line. That's the line. And, so many people don't talk about it out of fear. I didn't talk about it, but there was events that happened a few times that I didn't tell anyone about before I actually started to open up about it and tell people. Um, so, but as I did that, the more fear there was then because I knew that he knew and he was, it was just being more open about it was putting me in more danger. So
Mm.
um, that's another thing that I think people don't realize either. Like I know that people say that that makes sense, but to feel that fear on a deeper level is a whole different thing. But yeah, the whole idea about talking about it is just to open up the possibility of people talking about it with other people so that if somebody ever did come to them, they're not so uncomfortable about talking to them because they could potentially go, oh, I actually listened to a podcast of this and whatever. Like just that one little bit of being able to relate on any kind of level about a story or something to make that person feel heard, I think could be the make or break for a lot of people, because I didn't have that myself.
Yeah, yeah, that's a beautiful intention.
Yeah.
Um, and that would be the
Anyway,
tricky thing to
yeah.
have that desire to express yourself, but be like, I have to actually not communicate because there's potential retaliation and fear. But then
Mm.
also that theme of you wanting to express your story and be heard.
Yeah, that, and also, like I said, the complexity of how I feel still about the whole situation
Mm,
is hard because there's no, you know, it's sort of like speaking on my what the reality is, speaking on kind of what my beliefs are, and also making sure that it's not coming across as that I'm trying to shit can someone and bring them down in any way because it's definitely not the point, and I wouldn't have stayed for that long if that was what I was trying to do. I've never been like that. Whenever I've tried to tell my story, it's not to try and twist anything or create my own narrative or anything like that. It's always genuinely been my authentic story, for what I believe at the time. I just wanted to make sure that that's put out there because sometimes when you're in these relationships too, that kind of stuff can be thrown back at you before you even get out of it. So
mm.
just try and make you feel like you can't share your story, because that can potentially be how it's going to be portrayed. So you think, oh, maybe I don't want to do it because I don't want people to think that I was just trying to, make him out to be a bad person, all that sort of stuff, because that's not what I'm trying to do at all.
No, and it came across that you own your own part of it. You definitely didn't come across that way. You definitely,
Thank you. I just want to
yeah,
make sure that if I could just make sure that that's uh, put out there. I feel like that's important.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing your story. Yeah, again, feel really honored. So much courage that, you know, clearly a reflection of how strong you are as a person that you're able
Thank you.
to go dive into that and do it in such a balanced way. Yeah,
Thank
definitely
you.
very,
I
very
appreciate that.
admirable.
Thank you. That was the intention because I don't, like I said, yeah, I don't have, I've tried to do a lot of work on myself. I've gone to and from, bits and pieces. My life has definitely not been perfect since that event. But I do my best not to hold any kind of, I've had to work through a lot, but even from the beginning, I never had any animosity in a way that I wanted anything to be, uh, like, some people I spoke to that, oh, my back just twinged. Some people that I spoke to said, no, he deserves this and that, and blah, 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 like really like throwing it at him as a person. And I never ever was like that. I had a lot of hurt around what had happened, between us, but I understand that the justice system works how it works, and that's just there's nothing I can change right now myself about that. That's not what this is about either. But I never said it had anything bad to say. I just was, um, a, a few times I probably have, but like generally, just trying to just get that awareness of that it's never anything against him as a person or anything like that. It's more I really wanted it to be framed as a a way for people to just have either a little bit of courage to be able to share their story with people, but also, make it easier for other people if they haven't been around it to just be able to open up the discussion and be a little bit more of a safer, more comfortable environment or something relatable, to people so that they don't feel like that they're on their own in an isolating, complex situation like that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
No worries.